Scared of Ebola hantavirus and all of the things happening in the world, let's talk about fears to start things off. Because this was inspired by a science communicator that I follow, who I saw do a post the other day sharing their disappointment at how, as soon as news began to break about the hantavirus outbreak that's happening on or happened on the cruise ship recently, they just saw creators and the algorithm churning up so much misinformation and fear because it would drive engagement. And it is really disappointing. And I think also speaks to a surprising lack of media literacy and algorithm literacy, that despite everybody being on technology all of the time and interacting with it constantly, we haven't learned quite often how to see through the stuff that comes up. But maybe that's not surprising, because the algorithms function just like our brains. They're just throwing up fears and cravings, trying to get a reaction, get a compulsion. So I wanted to emphasize to everybody as we get started that when we explore mental fitness skills, they are not for irrational, weird stuff in our heads. Mental fitness skills are for navigating uncertainties in the world. Some of them inside of our heads, many of them outside of our heads. We are learning how to interact with a fear or a craving, and instead of engaging in compulsions reactively to those, we're going to proactively give our time and energy to things we want to create and build. That is so important. In the real world where we are, when there's so much uncertainty around us, when there are so many complex systems trying to pull you in many different directions, many of which will not be beneficial to you, it is so important that we set a direction. We set a direction of valued actions through that storm of uncertainty, so that we're creating the things we want to see in the world. Many different types of people and algorithms are going to try to play you just like the brain, right? Throwing up a fear or like offering you something, playing on your cravings to get you to react. Even your phones are going to do the same thing. Going to throw up something based on whatever you react to get you reacting more, doing more compulsions. That is, if you see yourself spending a lot of time online, how you're getting sucked into that. It is the exact same thing the brain does, right? So it's kind of not surprising that we see people struggle with media literacy and technology literacy, because we also struggle, you could say, with brain literacy. We struggle to notice the stuff inside of our heads, and instead of reacting to it, choosing a more useful direction. This is such an important skill. It is so important that we can have whatever the brain is throwing up, that we can also have whatever an algorithm is throwing up, whatever the news is throwing up, whatever somebody's trying to, whether a salesperson is trying to sell you something, a politician is trying to play on your fears and cravings to manipulate you into making a bad decision for you. It's so important wherever we're going in life that we're learning how to have experiences, not get sucked in by fear and craving, but instead make a decision that's positive for ourselves and for our communities over the long term. And we'll probably come back to this again during the live stream today, that we are talking about real things. These skills we explore are how to navigate life and how to build amazing things, rather than reactively trying to control fears or reactively chasing after like a momentary good feeling. So welcome to everybody that's dropping in and joining us. English Easy, you were waiting for the live stream. Thank you for waiting. I appreciate you being here. Ariel said, "Are you overseas?" I don't. Over which sea? I'm usually overseas. Are you asking what's the beginning point from which you're determining overseas? Andrea, thank you for wishing me an easy weekend. I hope you're having an easy weekend too. I would say I've had a good easy weekend. I was doing a bunch of planning around sort of kind of videos and courses to make coming up. Because also I notice a lot of people are running into, or I would say we as a planet in all sorts of ways are running into a lot of economic uncertainty. And so I really want to emphasize in my work giving more time to creating tools that people can easily access and affordably access to explore mental health and fitness skills. Because, yeah, we're just going to see people struggling more and more to access, like therapy, coaching, whatever. It can be difficult. And even as people just have less and less time. So, yeah, I was planning out a bunch of courses and things like that. So, hopefully those can, and also just like the practicality of needing to meet one person when we can get all of these tools online in a way that really supports people just learning them and running with them independently. Yeah, it just makes it more accessible and functions at a scale that meeting a person one-on-one cannot. And the great thing is research really backs up doing what's often referred to as like supported internet. We'll often describe it as internet CBT, but that gets confusing with inference-based CBT because they both give them the acronym ICBT. But online skills, well backed up in research, like doing an online course is just as effective as working with somebody one-on-one. So it's important we make these things accessible. So I was planning a bunch of that today in a really nice cafe with some cats. The cat. If you've been on the Mental Fitness Discord server recently, you may have seen me sharing this one cat at a really nice cafe that I enjoy going to. It's in a garden. It's totally outdoors. Today, I am happy to report everyone, the cat sniffed my hand. That's a big step because the cat doesn't interact with the guests at the cafe. It's always active in doing stuff with another cat, but they have their own little cat world going on. And so they'll run around and navigate through all the guests, but they really ignore the people. But today I held out my hand as the cat was walking by and it did stop to sniff my hand. So basically we're best friends now. Young Jedi, it's good to see you. Young Jedi, this is a good topic to explore. Now, and like, always feel free to talk about this and share about this. Whether, yeah, it's here. If you want to share about it on the Mental Fitness Discord server as well, feel free to. Yeah, so Young Jedi shared, how do we accept death? When you know the end of your life is near, the fear of turning into nothingness. I think one of the things I always emphasize, this actually something that came up in several conversations this week with community members and clients, is that accepting something doesn't mean we're saying it's good. It doesn't mean we're saying we're not going to have scary feelings about it. And I would say for everybody, when we look under our fears, we look at the feared consequence, we look at what we're afraid of losing, you're usually going to end up with something like death and nothingness, loss. And yeah, there are going to be some variations of it, right? Like I often bring up relationships, but even then, when we look at what we fear losing with relationships, we'll often be like, well, yeah, like I fear that it'll become nothing or we're going to die. On this journey of exploring mental health and fitness skills, I'd say we do not go on this journey of exploring mental health and fitness skills without exploring a new relationship with death. But that doesn't mean we're going to see it as like good. That doesn't mean accepting it means we don't feel things. I think a more helpful approach that I find to interacting with these experiences is to actually recognize the feelings I have about them, is to feel them. Like we can feel loss, and in that we can also feel love and care. We can recognize why something like nothing scares us. And in this moment, then we get to say, okay, well, then I'm not going to spend my time and energy on the nothing right now. I'd rather give my time and energy to the something. But absolutely, that uncertainty, right? So many of these skills that we explore about how do we interact with uncertainty in life, that uncertainty is going to be there. And we can recognize that we don't like it. We can recognize that it scares us. We can respect that uncertainty. By that, I mean, if we try to control it, we try to do something with it, we're only going to frustrate ourselves. And again, we're going to take away time and energy from the things that we actually want to do. So that might be, yeah, just one support, I guess I'd call it, that I'd start with, is that acceptance doesn't mean it's going to feel good. And so we don't have to, put tons of effort on, oh, well, I'm not accepting it correctly because it still feels scary. Or I've got to work harder on acceptance because I still don't like loss. No, we won't like it. We do not like loss. So I'll often talk about touching loss. Touching loss doesn't have to mean we're, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something that we would really like. I don't know, grabbing a bag of candy. I think that's a good, yeah. You hold a big bag of candy and you're like, this is amazing. That's not what we're trying to do with acceptance. We're not trying to change the reality of it. We're interacting with the reality of it. And we see that we don't like loss. And we see why it hurts. And then also, we see those things that we really care about. And so let's give our time and energy to those things that we care about for everybody. Because none of us get to hold on to them. When we try to hold on to them very tightly, it's very difficult for us. But I'll often bring up the idea that a space whale could swallow the world tomorrow. It's very much a thing that could happen for any of us very soon. So it's really important that we grow the things we care about and give our all to them right now. Because we don't know how long we get to keep them with us. Yeah. It's nice too, sometimes to not rush on right away from a topic like this. Yeah, Youngjara, yeah, as you're exploring this, as I said, always feel free to share about it. Yeah, share about the topic or whatever you'd like to celebrate and give some time and energy to celebrating. It's totally okay to connect with the community around things you'd like to celebrate too. Andrea. Andreas, I was wondering, how did you discover that we also need to cut out normal compulsions? It helps a lot to cut them out. I'm curious how you made that discovery. Yeah, so I was really lucky, I say around this, in that I did not have any insight or minimal insight. And insight, if anybody's not familiar with that in a mental health or psychology context, it's just kind of an awareness of like, do you know what you're doing is not helpful? Do you know what you're doing are compulsions? Do you see that you're like reacting to stuff that's delusional? I had none of that. So, the reason I say that's useful then is because I saw the compulsions as normal. Because so it was really clear to me that they were like I was just doing like this made sense. Just like there were so many other things that I was doing to control fears. And so even when, yeah, then it was helpful to kind of go, oh, okay, I get it now. These things I'm doing are that we would see as compulsions go to an extreme, but there were all sorts of other things, and even it was useful in therapy when I was bringing up some of the other things that in therapy, and particularly because I think also because I was doing therapy through a research program, there were very clear there were clear kind of guidelines or directions around the types of compulsions we were going to cut out, and then the ones that were considered not part of OCD. And that didn't make sense to me. So yeah, right from the start, I felt it was weird that there was this, like, what I saw as a very odd, rigid box around what counted as OCD compulsions or mental illness compulsions. And then there was all this other stuff that I was like, well, all of this other stuff is the exact same pattern. So why can't we, like, I'm going to now have to go and cut it all out. So why isn't that part of the same bucket? It didn't make sense to me. So in that way, because yeah, it's super useful. And I think in psychology, we really have screwed up a bunch by going after what we'll call abnormal psychology or psychiatry. Because it created this idea that the abnormal is off on its own. And I'd say this is probably part of taking a medical model approach to psychology. There's then an assumption that everything else is normal, and there's basically this like virus that shows up, which are the clinical compulsions. And so we're just going to clean away the virus, and then everything is fine. If we take a fitness approach to it, then yeah, we would recognize, okay, sure, there's an injury here and we have to treat the injury, but the injury didn't just fall from the sky. So if we get rid of the injury and we don't change how we cause the injury, then we're going to eventually just be back to having the injury again. And so that's what, yeah, I'd say one of the reasons I find a fitness approach is way more effective for mental health than a medical model approach. English Easy said, my entire life, I was driven by the mind and not the heart. That fixing and controlling was the motivation, and kind of that provided me a path for life. I never saw that as a problem. In fact, I thought I was very motivated and dedicated for life. Can you please elaborate in details, please? What could be a better way so that I live like that now? By the way, I think I should not be through mind. It should be through what we really love and like to do, what our heart says to do. I think the new goal should be actually living life. In one of your videos, you said you fired your brain. It does not work here anymore. Can you also please elaborate a little, please? So I would just watch it. Like, one thing that jumps out right away is actually, can you see this pattern of, yeah, so yeah, before it was like the brain was going to tell me what to do and I was going to follow it no matter what. But it's like, it could help to see that's the compulsion, is this thing is going to tell me what to do and we're going to do it no matter what. And now you're asking me to tell you what to do and you're going to do that, and no matter what. And I would just look at more at that kind of rigidity. Yeah, what if you're not going to follow, not even any of, it doesn't even have to be the heart. What if you don't have to follow any of your organs? Not even the spleen. We all know the spleen, best organ, smartest organ. I wish we could ask the spleen for its guidance. We can't, but what if you don't have to ask any organ? Instead, you get to try out some values. Also, we're not going to just rigidly take those values and be stuck with them. They are directions in the wilderness, and we're going to explore them with curiosity to see if that direction takes us where we want to go, takes us in a direction that's healthy for ourselves and our communities, that helps us build some things we want to see in the world. And if those values don't help us go in that direction, we'll celebrate that, yeah, we got to explore in that direction. We'll celebrate that curiosity and what we did get to see, and then we'll change direction. That focus, I find, can be on what we want to give and exploring things to give. But it'll be an exploration. There's no way to know that kind of perfect path through the wilderness. Because, yeah, we haven't been through the wilderness before. Ariel. So, yeah, you've explained overseas is overseas from your home country, Canada. Yes, I'm not in Canada right now. I travel like whatever is something that travels and is nomadic. Yeah, I'm forgetting it right now. There's actually, I found a word the other day. There's a term in Japanese. I was looking up an author because I wanted a quote to share in a video on mindfulness compulsions that I have coming up. And so I was getting that prepared. And while I was doing that, I was reading about, so I was going to share some from Dogen's work. Then I was reading about the temple that Dogen was at before starting Eiheiji. And that led me to learning about a term, which I'm going to forget right now, which describes the period of time when a monk is wandering around looking for a temple to study at. I feel like I kind of do that. And so there is a term for it. And so, yeah, I'm always overseas. Vince Pepe said, I'm very afraid of developing psychosis. Last week, after a distressing thought, I wondered, what if my crazy thought is true? I had a severe panic attack because I don't want to believe those thoughts, and I'm afraid that one day I might end up believing them. We like to be in control of our lives. We like to be in charge of our lives, and we like being ourselves. So quite often, we're afraid of things that could take away that control and that chance to be ourselves. It's one of the reasons it's so useful to look at the actions we practice. In this moment, we get to practice being ourselves and giving our time and energy to things we value. Being ourselves is not about checking thoughts. Like what you're describing there is suggesting, and this is something I'll often point out to people around this, it's suggesting that there are probably some unhelpful beliefs about the importance of thoughts and that you're attaching a lot of meaning to thoughts. I find it way more useful to see that thoughts are like weather. Like they are things we experience. Worrying that we'll lose control because a thought came up is like worrying that we'll lose control of ourselves because there'll be some clouds in the sky. Or anything else we could experience. Where we're going, ooh, but if I hear a car honk its horn 3 times, I'll lose control. So, one, it's helpful to recognize those are experiences. But 2, I'd be curious about how much time and energy you currently give right now in your life to reacting around thoughts and other brain stuff. Because what happens is, we start spending more time and energy on stuff up here, in which case we are actually spending our lives on the brain stuff, which means the brain stuff is taking charge of our lives. And then we get even more afraid of it because we're actually spending our life on it. So part of the practice of starting to take back that ownership and to practice living our lives is to drop the compulsions to like check and get certainty and get reassurance about brain stuff. Because yeah, if we're afraid of losing control of our lives to brain stuff, yeah, don't give up control of your life to brain stuff. What do you want to create and build in life? And then it's about practicing that while having any thought or feeling. Yeah, whatever the brain throws up is fine. And we can give our time and energy to what we want to be doing. Yeah, Ariel. So also a great example here in terms of what do we put in charge of our life. Ariel said, I have nagging thoughts about ending my relationship. How do I know when to follow it or not? But like, why would you base a decision on your relationship just around like thoughts? They could be nagging thoughts, they could be good thoughts. Likewise, like people mess up relationships all the time around thoughts they like, right? They see something they want and they go and, they cheat on their partner or whatever. They chase after something and they're like, oh, but that was a good thought. Yeah, it's not going to be useful, as you may have noticed in so many areas, to base long-term life decisions on thoughts. What criteria, what objective criteria can you use to determine what you want to grow in a relationship and who you want to grow that with? Because likewise, if the brain didn't have nagging thoughts, it might also not be a good relationship. But if you're like, well, everything is a red flag and terrible, but I don't have nagging thoughts, so I'll stay here. Right, that also wouldn't be useful. The presence or absence of thoughts, not a useful measure of stuff. Because I'm well. Thank you for being a member on the membership channel here on YouTube. Lately on the membership channel, we've been exploring I've been doing a series on contamination. So kind of going through the whole journey with cutting out contamination compulsions, but linking it to all of these other types of obsessions that are just versions of contamination compulsions, like obsessions we can have around thoughts. Like if I've got to clean away this thought, it ends up being the same kind of structure when we're working on skills as classic contamination fears. And so we're coming up to the end of the contamination series. Philip, also, thanks for being a member on the YouTube's member channel. Philip said, I wonder if most of the things we do are dependent on thoughts, example, talking, learning. How should we approach cognitive diffusion while being dependent on this? Oh, but I'd be really curious about that. He said, I wonder if most of the things we do are dependent on thoughts. This is maybe a great way to explore kind of the differences that we're talking about between reacting to random stuff coming up in the head versus using the brain as a tool. And I'd go after learning there. Because when you say learning is dependent on thoughts, I would challenge that, because you don't know what you're learning. You 1000% literally cannot think of it if it is a new thing you are learning. Like, for example, if I wanted to learn so I'm in Vietnam right now, amazing food in Vietnam. I went to a coffee workshop last Sunday to learn how to make Vietnamese coffees. I don't know if everybody knows this, but in the world, we have kind of like three, I would say probably three main types of coffee beans, two of which are the biggest, but even then, the biggest is Arabica beans. By far, like 80% of coffee production in the world is like Arabica. Then the second largest is Robusta beans. Robusta is very popular in Vietnam. Vietnam grows. In Vietnam, the figures are basically flipped. Like 80% of production is Robusta, and that's most of what you'll drink. I love Robusta. Robusta has suffered from a lot of bad marketing. It's not Robusta's bad marketing, it's probably marketing from other types of beans that have given it this image that's not as good. No, Robusta is amazing, especially fresh Robusta right from the hills here in Vietnam. And as well in Vietnam, they've developed a cafe culture and styles of coffee that really fit with the different flavor profiles and high caffeine of Robusta. Robusta has around 2 times as much caffeine as your typical Arabica. So if you've ever had coffee that was, just your normal coffee, which is probably Arabica, and thought, wow, there's so much caffeine here, double that when you're drinking Robusta. And so last week, because I love coffee culture, coffee in Vietnam, I went to a workshop on how to make Vietnamese coffees, because there's all sorts of really cool preparations that work, I would say, better with the Robusta bean because of it has a kind of a strong flavor and the high caffeine and so on. And so I went to learn that, but I could never have figured that out by thinking about it. I had to have other people show me the actions to do, and then I had to practice the actions and learn about them. And I would say that situation of using the brain to observe reality is very different from talking to the brain about stuff we already know, or even trying to time travel in the brain. It's a very, very key difference there, I'd say. Yeah, we're going to use our brains to learn stuff, but that's not going to come from kind of like asking the brain, hey, like, tell me about some fears, or something like that. And then just engaging with them. And in fact, I'd say if somebody was going to sit down and say, well, I don't need somebody to teach me how to make Vietnamese coffees, I'll just go figure it out on my own. Yeah, you could do that, but I'd be really suspicious, especially if you struggled with a lot of compulsions and things like that. I'd be suspicious that that's just the brain's way to get you to like spend a lot of time spinning your wheels on it. This is something I'll see community members and clients struggling with a lot, and I dealt with a lot too, that I would take the hardest route and the most challenging route and everything. I would make myself really busy. I would take on what I thought were good ideas that just led to like lots of stressful hard work. When we rely on our brains, we often just end up struggling and suffering. Instead, we're going to use it as a tool, but we're going to engage with things in reality outside of it to learn stuff. And I'd argue that's a far more effective way to learn, by bringing the brain along as a tool that we're going to use, but we're going to be present with what we're learning from somebody else, rather than spending the whole time like judging and talking in our heads. Yeah, does that make sense, Philip? Yeah, young Jedi. So, young Jedi Shadir, I do see the lies of the brain and the fear of loss. Now I feel like I can let the brain go and actually live. Yeah, you don't have to spend time on whatever the brain's throwing up, but you can have a lot of compassion, right? Like our brain is so, I'm trying to kind of describe a brain right now. Like it's afraid, right? It wants to grab onto things. It wants to avoid things. And so having a lot of compassion for that right now, like giving it a hug, but then, yeah, directing it to, as you see, like these things that we love. Because its fear really does come from that place of love. So being able to take it there. Yeah, and that can be uncomfortable. Um, but yeah, giving that time and energy to the things that we love, yeah, really is the practice. And that's never like this is going to come up because I know some other people asked about it on YouTube videos earlier this week. Because Young Jetty, yeah, you made the a comment above that too, where the topic of regrets and like what we spend time and energy on. Yeah, there's always, if we look at stuff we've done or are doing, even in this moment, we can often notice where we might be spending time and energy on something that we don't need to. And we can just have a lot of compassion for that, right? We can have that awareness. See, oh, I see why I did that because of, I was trying to get this, or I was trying to grab onto and hold that. And we can celebrate that awareness. Yeah, we don't have to, like, the fact that we can see that is so amazing. And yeah, we just live right now. And so we can always thank the brain. Like, yep, you're right. There are things I really care about. And so I'm not going to spend time arguing with my brain about like something that's not here right now. But thank you, brain, for reminding me what I care about. And so I'm going to go and be with that and give to that right now, because that's what I want to do. And I think the great thing about that is that then we can bring that practice to so many simple things. Yeah, like even one of the exercises I'll often share with people is around like just doing, chores or activities or anything like that. And yeah, what's it like to approach them as this is like the first time and last time we ever get to do that activity? It can be a really wondrous, amazing activity to just be there doing that thing as a human right now. Fitness is love. He said, I'm currently working with a mentor. He helps me make decisions. Do you recommend taking decisions by yourself or having a mentor who helps in decision making? Fitness is love. What are the decisions about? Absolutely. Like, borrowing values from somewhere else, something I talk about frequently. I'll compare it to using a recipe. If there's something we're doing, like we want to bake really delicious cookies, I mean, we're probably going to ask somebody who already bakes really delicious cookies, like, how do you bake really delicious cookies? But then there are other situations where it's going to be useful to explore that, like asking somebody else to make the decision for us is going to interfere with us actually learning. Like one of the areas where I'm seeing that happen a lot to people right now is with chatbots and LLMs. People are kind of missing a key piece of learning. It's something I'm worried about is seeing people very quick lose the ability to learn. Like it's been shocking that it's almost like in a matter of months, maybe it's been a bit longer, maybe this has been like building up over the past year, but I'm really noticing it recently that if I reply to a question that somebody asks by explaining that it's a thing you need to figure out, like that just causes meltdowns. And that's like in the way that I would expect if I was explaining to a toddler and you just saw the toddler like, I can't tie my shoes or something, and they just got very upset, or they were doing a puzzle and they just threw the puzzle. A lot of adults seem to be having a similar experience now in that they're not figuring things out. Like learning how to learn is a very necessary skill. Do not outsource your like figuring outness skills. I don't know what we call that. Your like reasoning skills. Yeah. To something external from you. Like you need to be smarter than a toddler. Everybody here, please be smarter than toddlers. And that's a thing. That's not a thing we have. That's a process. I think that's the key here. People are mistaking knowledge for intelligence. Intelligence is the process of figuring things out. And so if you start to just take answers from a vending machine, boom, your intelligence just goes off a cliff. Andrea said, I really like the idea of cutting out normal compulsions. It helped me a lot to see where I'm maintaining the pattern of coping, controlling, and checking. I only came across this in your work, so I really appreciate this perspective shift. Thank you. Oh, Andrea, I'm really glad. Yeah, you're finding it useful. I think it's so important. And yeah, especially, I think for everybody, if you're running into relapsing repeatedly, for instance, I think cutting out the normal compulsions is the big key with that. I really credit cutting out the normal compulsions with maintaining recovery now for whatever it is, like 15 plus whatever years, because they're just things that would seem normal that I just won't do them. So there's no chance to go back to the old way of doing things, but also then there's no chance, like the brain's not then churning up all sorts of stuff because of that. Because the normal compulsions fuel so much of the obsessions too. Because the brain's smart. The brain's very logical. It's like, hey, you control all this stuff. You're going to love controlling this. And then it throws up something really nasty. But it's just doing it because we've been practicing that. Abed Mud as well, thank you for joining us from the pit. I hope you're having an easier weekend too. Philip said, how can we explore a value like being kind without letting it become an excuse for people pleasing? Oh, it's a fine line for me. Yeah, being kind. So yeah, maybe it's just starting there. Like being kind is not people pleasing. And even so, maybe if you removed that, then what else could it be? And so one area to even begin with kindness is just with yourself. There's a video actually I shared. If you go on YouTube into the shorts, it's in the public shorts, but I think it's the most recent public short. It's about the exercise to write out kind of like how would you treat a colleague that you really respect and admire and trust, and then how would you treat a colleague that you like do not trust, do not respect, and really worry about giving them any tasks. And then to look at those actions, even just in how you look at them, talk to them, interact with them. The first set of actions about how do you treat somebody that you really respect and admire and trust, those are the actions we need to start practicing to ourselves, and that's a great way to understand kindness. When we see how we're going to approach kindness to ourselves, then it can be much easier to see how we might do that with other people. Quite often we're not very kind to ourselves. And so then also we end up doing a lot of people pleasing because we need other people to like us because we're huge assholes to ourselves. And so if you're a huge asshole to yourself, the brain is like, I don't want to be left alone with this person. We got to get other people to like us. And then we end up in a lot of compulsions around other people because we're such jerks to ourselves, like real assholes to ourselves. When we are not assholes to ourselves, it can be much easier to explore healthier interactions with other people because we're not desperate for validation or respect or trust. We're already giving those to ourselves. So then we can, have an interaction as well that's not transactional, not about trying to get something. Abed, exactly. Everyone is always overseas when you think about it. We're all overseas. There's probably like one really beautiful, amazing island in the world that we would all love to visit, and we can just think of ourselves as always being overseas from that perfect island. Fitness is love. Said, so you often recommend exploring different paths for values finding, but it takes a lot of time to learn through this way. What do you think of asking actions from experts instead of exploring paths? Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, you may have posted that before I mentioned the cookies. Yeah, if there's a specific direction that we know about, so I always recommend this with business, with different professions. You're going to open a cookie shop. Yeah, you don't have to figure that out. We know how to run successful cookie shops. We know how to run successful donut shops. Like that is not a thing you have to spend, and this goes back to the learning thing again. Yeah, you don't have to spend time trying to figure that out. Right? I don't have to spend hours at home trying to figure out how to make Vietnamese coffees. I just go to a coffee roaster and coffee shop and they teach me. And so, yeah, when there's like a very specific thing, what I practice now is not figuring it out. Because I know my brain would love that. It would love to just add to the number of things to do and always be like, you got to figure this out. How are we going to do it? No, if it's something somebody's already doing well, go find out how they do it. Totally. Really useful. Hope said, how do I trust myself with cutting out compulsions? I plan and I have reminders and sticky notes, but I'm still unable to focus on what's important in life. There's always a component to build on. So I did a video on this recently on the members channel here on YouTube. Yeah, we can have all of the supports in place, there is no getting around like doing the exercise, and that'll feel uncomfortable. And I think sometimes what we're looking for when we're asking people for a structure to cutting out compulsions, or we're doing some kind of course, or we're looking at therapy, whatever, we're sometimes looking for a way not to have that uncomfortable feeling. But we will have the uncomfortable feeling, and while having it, we've got to choose that new direction. So we look at supports to create the situations where we can practice that, but we still have to do it. So it is like a physical fitness exercise. We can have all of the supports in place imaginable. We can have the great fuel to, energize us in the workout. We can have the best spandex workout outfits, greatest shoes, whatever, but we still have to do it. And so there, you asked about trusting yourself with cutting out compulsions, but trusting yourself is doing it. Trust is not certainty. If we're looking for certainty before cutting out the compulsion, that is not trust. Right? Because if we trust somebody, we don't know what'll happen. If we know what'll happen, then we're not trusting. Like, we wouldn't need to trust them because we already know what'll happen. Trust is giving ourselves that support, that respect. I'll often describe it as being a fan of ourselves. We're going to be an unreasonable fan of ourselves. I don't know how it's going to work out, but I trust that person in the mirror to take care of it. I look forward to seeing what they do, but I don't know what they'll do. I don't know what they'll do. I trust them to take it on. So you're going to trust yourself to step into uncertainty and do something different, and it's going to feel uncomfortable. Just going to scroll a little bit quickly here. And then I'm going to pop back up. I'm going to move. Maybe we'll move. We'll see. Maybe move a bit quicker. We'll see if I can do that. Andrea said, how should we approach replying to messages in a way to sustain mental fitness? My phone is buzzing a lot. I want to maintain communication with the people I care about, but I'm not sure how to approach this. I have some people that I'd like to reply to faster and than others. Example, replying faster to my mom, but not to my friends that send me 100 memes. I thought at first, just as I was reading it, because when you put example, I read that as like X. Like, I thought you were saying like, I want to reply faster to my ex. I was like, don't do that. No, but it was example, my mother. That's great. And of course, it is Mother's Day in many parts of the world. So shout out to the moms out there and people with moms. We'll express gratitude to our mothers today. One thing that I find really important with messages is the being proactive part. And this goes back to what I was talking about at the beginning. How we interact with technology is a great way to explore this. It seems to really help when we're proactive with things rather than being reactive. So I don't have any notifications turned on when I use technology. And I use technology, like all of my work is through technology and social media and things like that. I just set up times when I'll proactively do things. So I do have a calendar. So I guess I would describe it this way. So there is a calendar that will send me emails that tell me when things are happening. And that'll also pop up as a notification. It's just there's no sounds or vibrations. And so what that enables me to do then, when I pick up my phone, I can just look through the notifications of what's happening. And those notifications, though, are only for my calendar. So also, if there's a notification there, it's telling me something I need to go and do. I will put in my calendar times to answer messages, and even I'll write, like when I know there's like specific messages and things like that I need to respond to and people I want to reach out to. I'll put it there. But there's something about this switch from when we're reactive, like something could pop up, and then versus being proactive. However, yeah, if there's messages from somebody that you want to get that buzz, and there's a bunch of people you don't want to get it, just seeing because often apps now will sometimes have the ability to do that, where you can set. Sometimes it's that you set it as silent, but there's particular numbers with something like phone numbers that you set as I can't remember the term for it, but like they'll always go through. So even if it's set to not vibrate, those will always vibrate. So yeah, just finding those ways to turn off the notifications you don't need to react to. English Easy said, I've realized that it's very difficult to identify what are wrong psychological practices I've adopted. Any tips for that? Yeah, so I always, rather than looking at what's wrong, because that could be everything, or there could be so much, right? For instance, a wrong psychological practice is hitting yourself in the face with a frying pan, but also a wrong psychological practice is hitting yourself in the face with a lamp. Well, also hitting yourself in the face with a saucepan. A wrong psychological practice would be hitting yourself in the face with a frying pan, a saucepan, a small saucepan, and a large saucepan, which I guess is more like a soup pot. Yeah, so a soup pot, that's bad. Right, like we would just have to go through so much that's wrong. That's not going to be useful to us. So what I always suggest is that we build around what we want to create and grow. I describe it as making delicious cookies. If you're making delicious cookies, you don't need to do compulsions around every single bad thing you don't want in the cookies. Instead, what are the good things you want in the cookies? What are the good practices of making delicious cookies? And we're gonna do those. By doing those, we will address all of the other stuff that's not unhelpful, because it just won't be part of it. So if we look at where we want to go and what we want to build, we'll take care of dropping the compulsions, because the compulsions won't be part of it. Enjoy making delicious cookies. Scott, good to see you, Scott. Thanks for dropping by. Scott shared that thoughts are just weather bit with such a huge realization in recovery. Yeah, it makes such a difference to understand these are our experiences. I think in some cultures, the awareness of thoughts and feelings is presented as one of the senses. And I think right, it's one of those ways too, you can see how arbitrary some things are. Like it's very normal, at least in where I grew up, that we would talk about 5 senses. And thoughts and feelings were not one of the senses. It's way more helpful to see it as just another thing we experience. So it's just one of the things we sense. Just like we hear stuff, we see stuff. Everything we hear and see is processed in our brain. Thoughts and feelings are also things that we register and process in our brains. Mr. Joe, thanks for being part of the membership channel. Mr. Joe said, I just finished last week's tech support stream because I'd missed it. Oh, Joe, thanks for checking it out. Mr. Mitchell 100 said, this isn't really a question, but I just wanted to say that I've always struggled with the idea of focusing on values because I cannot find value in certain things. I mentioned a job I hate last time. Unfortunately, I have to work the job due to life circumstances. Something that has helped, however, has been to think, what would I do if I was not mentally ill, to act in accordance with that? Not only act, but also think. So would a mentally fit person be thinking about how this twinge in my arm could mean I'm having a heart attack? Would a mentally fit person be wasting time Googling various symptoms? No. A mental fit guy would be like, that's annoying, and go about his day. This shift in thinking has been helpful, so I wanted to share it. Oh, Mr. Mitchell 100, thanks for sharing. it is so important that we find those things that work well for us. Again, that's why I find fitness is a great model. Yeah, like there's all sorts of different types of workouts and ways of doing things. And there's all sorts of skills. You don't have to explore all of the skills that somebody else is exploring. If you want to, you can. And there's going to be changes and practices that are going to help develop those skills and capacities. But you're going to find other ways to do the things you need to do and want to do in life. And it's all about putting together that unique toolkit of skills and understandings that are going to work well for where you want to go on the adventure. Mr. Joe, yeah, feel free to just, post your questions in the comments or the chat there. Young Jedi, you are posting a question there asking for reassurance, and we don't have to spend time on that. But what would you like to celebrate? Sajeda Actor, yeah, he said, have you recovered from harm types of thought, please? Yes, absolutely. I had all sorts of compulsions around harm thoughts. Like when I went to get help, I wasn't using knives because I would, like if I was just walking to the grocery store and I thought about a food I would have to cut, I would then see an image of me cutting my fingers off and I would feel it. So I would be like walking to the grocery store doing this to make sure I still had my fingers. And then I wouldn't buy those foods. I was at that point just eating lots of like frozen food and stuff like that. So yeah, there was a period of time where I didn't use knives, and that was only part of it. I had all sorts of harm. I wasn't walking by certain places because I might see people there and I would see them getting harmed. And yeah, it's a totally normal, there is a video, there's actually a couple videos, but yeah, if you go on my YouTube channel and look up like harm, recovery from like harm thoughts and stuff like that, there's a bunch of videos on it that involves the type of exercises we do to cut out those compulsions. Yellow. Yeah, you said, I saw your reply to my comments. This was a comment on a YouTube video. And you said, I really appreciate that, but I kind of didn't understand. The thought, even if I thought it was really, really bad and could make me a terrible person. So since you said it was a really, really bad thought, you used really twice, I'll just point out it's only a really terrible, horrible, meaningful thought if you use really 3 times. So 2 really is not so bad. You shared again, so I'll explain for everybody what I was sharing about that. And this is key to see, because often this is also one of the reasons I emphasize to people to be careful and not use them when they're talking to chatbots, because the question we often ask about mental health is often part of the compulsions. And so, but if you ask that to a chatbot, the chatbot's going to engage in the compulsion, even though you think you're asking a question that's useful. The question itself, you kind of need to get pushed back on it. So what Yellow's sharing about here is a similar thing. Yellow shared a question asking about ignoring a particular thought, but the reason for ignoring the particular thought was a whole bunch of compulsions. And part of it shared right there, Yellow, where you said, it could make me a terrible person. So that belief that, and so in the comment it was about, if I thought the thought in the past, that meant I'm a terrible person. And then that fuels, that's a very common compulsion, that fuels a lot of compulsions to check for reassurance. Did I really think the thought, or did I experience the thought, and so on. But that whole framework, that idea that if I think a thought, it means something about me, that's completely false, made up, not a real thing. That does not exist. That, and the example I shared there is, that's like me saying, well, if I accidentally hear my neighbor fart, then I'm a good person. But if I wanted to hear my neighbor fart, oh no, then I'm a bad person. And then you're checking, like, did I accidentally hear it or did I want to hear it? Like that's all compulsions. That's all made up. Also, there's no meaning other than a meaning we invent and give to something like that. But then it's all a bunch of compulsions to like be checking that. Yeah, so you don't, being a good person has absolutely nothing to do with, yeah, what you're checking on around thoughts there. So there's not, I'm not going to have an answer to the question about the particular thought because any amount of checking around it is just going to be more of the compulsions. Yep. We experience thoughts just like any kind of other experience. So like seeing something, like if we walk down the street, this is another a great example. If I'm walking down the street and there's a bag of garbage and I look at it, if I'm then interrogating, did I mean to look at the garbage or did I accidentally look at the garbage? What's that mean about me? Because maybe I'm saying that if I look at garbage, then I'm a bad person. I am garbage. No, like it doesn't mean anything. Likewise, another area where people struggle with this a lot, I've shared some posts on social media about this recently, is with their staring OCD. You'll sometimes see it referred to because people will latch on to, did I intend to look there or did I accidentally look there? And the reality is our eyes are doing all sorts of things all of the time. But again, it's that belief that it means something. But that is 100% us inventing that. And yeah, it's not useful. So these made up things that we do compulsions around, yeah, we don't have to do them. Oh, and Mr. Mastodon Phone, Dylan, thank you so much for taking care of the chat. I just saw you sharing some useful suggestions with people in the chat. Thank you for being here and taking care of the chat with us today. I really appreciate it. Yeah, Mr. Mitchell, 100 Vietnamese coffee, so delicious. Just, I could drink buckets of it. Ignacio, thank you for being a member on the members channel. And thank you for wishing everybody a good Sunday. I hope you're having a good Sunday as well. Jada Actor asked, what can I do when I have some uneasy thought? We don't have to do anything. Isn't that wonderful? All this unpaid overtime work we've been doing for the brain when it throws out its garbage and we've been like, oh, I've got to clean it up. I've got to do something. We don't have to work for it anymore. The uneasy thoughts can be there. Just like any other thing we pass on the street. Just Vincenzo said, Mark, you've often said you haven't had any relapses with OCD since years, but what about the so-called setbacks? Has that ever happened to you? Should we expect them long term? When you say so-called setbacks, what does that, who is the calling them? And yeah, what would a setback mean to you? Eric's Motion said, should we analyze our thoughts to figure something out from them, or should we ignore them? And will they come back if we do that? So it's not as simple as that, I'd say. Yeah, we don't have to, in general, it's going to be useful to start not attaching so much meaning to thoughts. At the same time, we can have a lot of compassion for why particular topics might come up. For instance, if somebody has a goal, an unhelpful goal of being liked by everybody, and that's a thing they want to get, it's very natural that their brain would then throw up intrusive thoughts about them doing horrible things people would judge them for. So if they notice the brain throwing up horrible thoughts of like harming people, doing terrible things, it will be useful to notice, oh yeah, the brain's doing this because I'm afraid of being judged by people. Oh yeah, and I spend tons of my time and energy every day like posting on social media, hoping to get, likes from people, hoping to get validation. I'm always thinking in the mornings, what are people going to think about how I look today? So it is useful in that sense that in whatever the brain's throwing up, we can typically see some unhelpful goals that we're chasing and we're giving to it. So if I'm telling the brain, hey, you got to make sure everybody likes me, then I can't complain when the brain thinks up, well, what if you did this? And what if you said this terrible thing? And what if this thing went wrong? And what if this? The brain is doing its job. I told it, I want to make sure I don't do anything that people could hate me for. So now the brain is going to think through all of the things that people could hate me for. So yeah, we ignore it in the sense that we need to start to recognize, oh yeah, it's just doing this thing based on an unhelpful goal I set. So I don't need to engage with that. I need to change the goals that I'm setting and the actions that I'm doing. So there is that element, but also we can understand where the brain got the idea to throw up that stuff. And that can be useful for making those changes. Mr. Joe, oh, I see, Mr. Joe, you signed up for 2 months on the membership channel. Welcome. Mr. Joe, I'll just let you know, you're signed up to the brain level. So everybody for joining the membership channel, so there's brain, and the brain level has access to the text posts. So if you go to the post section on YouTube, there'll be a whole bunch of members' text posts. They're like articles going into different, approaches to making changes and mental fitness skills and things like that. Next up is the donut level. Donut level has access to the videos. So there I make a bunch, that's where I've posted that series of videos on the contamination compulsions as a template or a model for cutting out so many other obsessions that we can get caught up in. And then there's also the alpaca level. And alpaca is where I'll make you custom videos on whatever you want to, whatever topic you want to have them on. Mr. Joe, here's your question. You said, I need your help with current real event OCD that my brain's starving to latch onto it and dragging me in deep shame and self-hate. One of the things I find key with real event is especially just to recognize that the compulsions are happening in the present. So there's no difference with real event OCD and any other OCD. The compulsions are only happening right now. So watch out for getting caught up in going, yeah, but this is real. Sure, any OCD is real, right? And that you're really having a fear and then trying to do compulsions around it right now. But the changes are going to happen in the present. And so rather than doing those compulsions in the present, what would you like to be doing? Philip, you said, related to the first question, how can we give enjoyment and learn how to enjoy things we value with any brain stuff, thoughts, feelings, etc.? Right now, many things feel contaminated with brain stuff. So yeah, this is exactly why I was exploring that series on contamination compulsions in the members channel, because we'll often see thoughts, feelings, memories of real events as a contamination. And then we don't want to take it into things. And so even, Philip, maybe check out, if you see there's a template I shared recently for organizing, kind of the superficial topic, and then a human goal and skills practice and all of that kind of stuff. There's a template I shared there to capture all of the different things we organize when we're working on these changes and these skills. Maybe check out one of those posts in the members channel. And then if you want to fill it out, we can talk there. If you want to ask comments or send me a message on Instagram or email, we can talk there about the exercises to practice having the contaminated feeling while doing something we value. Because that's how we practice it with this. We bring up whatever the wrong thought is, and there's many different ways we can kind of trigger that or bring it up. And then we do that while going to do something that we value. So we practice having the contaminated thought while doing something important quite often, something that we wouldn't want the thought to be involved with. That's how we really build up that skill. scrolling on down. Blooper 785, welcome. And I am going through some conversations happening in the chat. And Andrea, oh, you're welcome. Yeah, Andrea, you're getting started on becoming a psychologist. Have a lot of fun with that. Oh, and you said, so Andrea said here, great advice is always, in like 10 years when I'll be a psychologist, keep an eye out on your emails for me to organize a mental fitness workshop in Romania. Andrea, that would be amazing. I look forward to it. We have a bunch of community members in Romania. So yeah, absolutely. We could totally do a meetup in Romania, maybe even before 10 years from now. Ayerballer, he said, I've started intense ERP. It's only been a couple days, but seems like it's working. With that said, I wake up in the morning feeling awful, dizzy, and depressed mostly. Is that normal? Let's talk about what it means for ERP to be working. ERP, when we say that it's working, it can really help to define that by us doing the actions we want to be doing, rather than spending time and energy checking for reassurance on unwanted experiences. It's so important to recognize the brain never cared about the topic. So if you're doing ERP around just like a superficial topic, the brain is just going to move to some other unwanted experience to get you to go and check for reassurance on it, right? Because you're still just doing the same compulsions. So when I mentioned that, do you see what you just did? So yeah, you started to cut out compulsions. Very naturally, when we make any change, there's going to be a rise in unwanted experiences. Some could be physical, very common, that you'll notice it move from the stuff in the head to something in the body. So you mentioned you're waking up feeling awful and you've gone online to check for reassurance about it. So that is an example of the compulsions. As you're exploring ERP, so yep, this is like, it's important to recognize that the brain doesn't care about the topic. It cares about throwing up an unwanted experience and getting you to try and cope with it, check on it, control it. So you see now how that works and that it's not about the topic. So as you're working on ERP, something I found really helpful was to picture it like there was a hole in my head. So like the space that by me cutting out the compulsions, I had removed the compulsions filled the hole in the space. Let's put it that way. And so then I cut out the compulsions and then there was this big hole there. And then it helped me to recognize the brain's gonna try to fill it by throwing up more unwanted experiences. And it's up to us when we cut out the compulsions with ERP to recognize it was never about a topic. So it doesn't matter if the unwanted experience topic changes, because it's gonna change. I'm not going to react to it with the old coping and checking and controlling. And by doing that, we start to shrink this hole in our heads, this cavern, so that it demands fewer compulsions. And if we keep cutting out the compulsions, no matter what it moves to, that cavern will shrink to a tiny, tiny, tiny little gap and then disappear. But we've got to not jump in there with more checking and controlling, because that's just going to fill the gap. Mr. Joe, thank you so much for a donation too. Oh, I appreciate your kind words. Yeah, thank you for being here today and sharing with everybody. Kuzama, you're welcome. Yeah, someone mentioned here, your template for cutting out the compulsions in the subscriber channel was very helpful. Yeah, I was trying to get at a way we could capture in a phone-sized kind of image or worksheet all of the things that we're going to keep track of when we're, say, planning a month of making changes around one of the obsessions or a set of compulsions. So I think it'll still be a work in progress, but I think it's good that we can get it into that kind of format. Mr. Mitchell 100 has offered everyone to come to Germany to work on your staring OCD. Abed, so what do you do if you are in the wrong life because you never understood your own needs or they weren't accepted by society and now it's like crisis time, so it's not the time for making changes? We or no, you can't like be in a wrong life. Like we are just in the life that, that we are in. And because I think if we start saying there's like a right life and a wrong life, or and it like I don't even know how we would go about defining those, but inevitably with the brains that we have, our special unique version of brains, which are hoping to move up to number 17 on the top 50 organ list, and they're not going to make that. They would just tell us it's all wrong. So yeah, even just even in like laying out those different things, I would say that's probably spending way too much time and energy in the head, like this idea that, oh well, I'm in the wrong life because of this and this and this, like all of the time spent on that one was guaranteed to only produce like wrong things. But yeah, it's just is not going to be beneficial in any way. What if we are where we are right now? And in this context, we get to look at what's around us and we get to make a choice based on what we value giving our time and energy to. And that's all any of us ever have. There's no like right or wrong life. Scott said, your work really resonates in my peer support group. Oh, and it was crucial for me to get better and have hope again. Funny how this is. The less we do, the better we get. Keep carrying the fire. Oh, thanks a lot, Scott. Yeah, it is absolutely true. Like we drop the, and by true, I mean dropping the unpaid overtime work for the brain is so much more beneficial than all of these side quests it has us running on. Yeah, Scott, thanks a lot for sharing it with your peer support group. I really appreciate that. It's yeah, it's a huge honor to know that yeah, people want to share these tools with others, and I think it's great, everybody too, that you're finding ways to support other people on their journeys. Because yeah, it is so beneficial to learn how we can change our interaction with the stuff in our heads, how we can cut out these compulsions that have been in our lives forever. It's so much more enjoyable without them. But it's, for whatever reason, just not a thing as a society that we've talked a lot about, that's been as accessible as some other things. It is so enjoyable to not have to spend all of our time and energy trying to chase our brains around, trying to control and avoid feelings. So thank you, everybody, for sharing that support with others. Just Vincenzo, so sharing about the setbacks. So he said, I'm good for 2 or 3 weeks, then not so good for about a week. Yeah, so I wouldn't call that a setback. I would just look at that as you're seeing. So do you know when I share the uncertainty curve? The uncertainty curve, you can expand to all sorts of time frames. And we're learning a lot there about how we change. So if you notice that you're good for 2 weeks and then you go back to some compulsions, what I would say you're learning about there is you're getting close to the top of something, but then whatever the brain's doing to push back, So like we were talking earlier about how it's going to come up with whatever unwanted experience will get us to do more compulsions to fill the gap. You're seeing it there. So after 2 weeks, what's it doing to convince you to go back to the compulsions? And to explore that, you can just start to be curious about it. So what are the changes you want to make? If there are particular compulsions you want to cut out, and go and do it on that kind of, with the aim to do it permanently, identifying those actions that you just want to keep in your life, the compulsions you don't have to do anymore. But be really curious this time about what happens before you start to go back to the old habits. That is preventable. Quite often, maybe as you heard me exploring with Andrea earlier, quite often that's about the normal compulsions. There's usually a bunch of things that we start doing that we see as normal and necessary, and they take us back into the actual clinical stuff. Cutting out those normal compulsions will typically be the way to prevent that kind of setback. But that'll feel very weird because you'll be dropping some stuff you've probably been doing your whole life. George from the previous live, you said, I have to say the anxiety and depersonalization is mostly gone, but I still have the thoughts. Without a lot of anxiety, how do I proceed to the last step of recovery? So I approach great mental health and fitness as having any thought or feeling. And I would say that trying to clean away thoughts and feelings is an example of the compulsions. That's all anybody is doing when they're any kind of classic version of the contamination compulsion, whether it's on our hands or in our heads, saying, I don't like this experience and I want to get rid of it. That is the fuel for struggling with our mental health. So if you are describing the last step of recovery as getting rid of thoughts, I would see that as the first step of struggling with mental health. So I wouldn't describe it as the last step of recovery. That doesn't sound like a helpful approach to me. I'd be more curious about what you want to start giving time and energy to in life. Because if the anxiety is not in the way, why aren't you spending time and energy on the things you want to grow in life? Why are you checking online to clean away thoughts? I bet there are way more useful things you could give that time and energy to. Emil said, thank you for everything you do and love watching your coffee workshop adventure pictures. Oh, thank you for checking them out. It was delicious. It was amazing. If everybody gets a chance, my favorite kind of Vietnamese coffee is salt coffee, like café moi. And it's not a thing I have a lot because it's, especially if my mother is watching. Hi, Mom. My mom looked up once. The nutrition info in a salt coffee, it's incredible. The story that I was told at the workshop is that fishermen invented the salt coffee so that they could, right? Because you get like a day's worth of energy from a salt coffee. So you drink a salt coffee early in the morning and then you head out to the ocean. The story that they told us at the coffee roasters was that the reason the salt coffee got invented though is because the fishermen were making the coffee in their boats while at sea, and as the salt would get into the coffee, they realized that, oh, we should put salt in the coffee. I don't think, I've been in the ocean before. You don't get that much salt if you're just drinking something. But that's the story. But that it was invented by fishermen to have in the morning before heading out to sea, I 100% believe. Because if you have a salt coffee in the morning, you don't even, like, you're just on rocket fuel until the afternoon. Tegan, Samuel Dean, you said, what about mental compulsions? Yeah, is there anything in particular you're curious about with mental compulsions? One thing I would emphasize to everybody is mental compulsions are no different than physical compulsions. And by that I mean if you recognize that you have a compulsion to look up something for reassurance online, and you're like, that's a physical compulsion, I'm gonna cut it out. Or you recognize you have a physical compulsion to ask for reassurance from somebody, and you're like, I'm gonna cut that out. That is the same pattern as a mental compulsion. So if in your head you're like, I'm going to sit down and think back through that experience to make sure I didn't do something bad, that is the same as looking it up online. That's the same. If you're going to have the conversation in your head trying to reassure yourself you didn't do some bad thing, that is the same as asking somebody outside of your head whether or not you did some bad thing. So just to understand mental compulsions, just consider the thing I'm doing in my head right now. If I did it outside of my head again and again for hours, would I recognize that's a compulsion? If it is, yeah, you don't have to do it. Sajid Akhtar, I see you said, please answer my question how you handled harm-related and intrusive thoughts and when they are loud, what to do actually. So I'm not sure if you asked that again. Maybe I had already answered that. But you can find a video that's going to go into much more detail on my channel that like breaks down. So I mentioned earlier for example, the not using knives. So I explain an example of what it was like to start to, for example, use knives again or go to places that I had avoided because of the harm thoughts. So yeah, I would check that out because that video goes into much more detail than I can right now. But yeah, it involves like all of the things we explore. Identifying something we value, doing the valued action while having those thoughts come up. And they're welcome to come along with it. And so that's also to your question of what to do when they're loud. Yeah, they're like, we want them to be allowed. Like I want to learn how to cut vegetables while having the brain scream. It's that kind of approach rather than going, oh no, it's loud. I can't do the thing I want to do right now because of that. Right? That is how the brain is, creating the compulsions or the environment for the compulsions. And then we do the compulsions as a reaction to that. So yeah, really keep an eye out for that. We want to learn how to do things with the loudest noises, the biggest thoughts, the wildest feelings. Like that is the skill we're practicing. Young Jedi, you're asking about manifesting and law of attraction. This is part of the reassurance, and I think you know that. What would you like to share about? Mr. Joe said, my question about last week live, how the rewarding system for values-based actions inside of brain stuff is not a good practice. Actually, Mr. Joe, can you ask that question again? I don't quite understand it. Is how rewarding system for values-based inside of brain stuff? Yeah, actually, Mr. Joe, can you maybe rephrase that question? I don't understand what you mean there. Blooper 785 said, I'm too afraid of letting the mind be because if I do, I might get a scary thought. So I keep forcing myself to think about specific things to block out the scary thoughts. It's become a reflex. But Blooper, then you said, is meditation a good compulsion cutting practice? I don't like. Are you asking that in reference to the compulsion you shared about above that question? I mean, you wouldn't only have to explore that with meditation. If you're currently saying, oh, I don't want to have thoughts, there's probably going to be lots of different areas to explore cutting out that compulsion. Yeah, meditation can be a great way. Like in many ways, we are, when we sit to meditate, practicing being and having any experience. And so meditation is, like, I really enjoy it as a practice of that. And yeah, suggest it to people, for that reason. But then it's still something we have to take everywhere in life. Everybody, salt coffee is amazing. I will go and have a salt coffee too soon and share it. I'll share it on Instagram. Maybe I'll share it here on YouTube then as well. in the posts. We'll do a public post. I'll just make a note of that. Share salt coffee follow up. It's funny. I haven't had a salt coffee here yet because salt coffee is famously from Hue, and I like Hue. I visited Hue many times. If you go to Thich Nhat Hanh's Root Temple, so for everybody who's not familiar, like Master Thich Nhat Hanh is a very well-known, hugely impactful Zen master in the world. His Root Temple is just outside of Hue, kind of outside of the center of the city. And so I visited there a couple times, and Hue is also where we get salt coffee from. And so the coffee shops in Hue are really amazing, and they're very enjoyable. There, I would drink a salt coffee a day. I haven't had one in the city where I'm at yet, but I will have one and share it with you all. I'll just make a note. Share salt coffee with everybody. It's great. Once you see salt coffee, your life will be changed. And yeah, Mr. Mitchell 100, is it salty? Yeah, like it's, I can't remember the exact amount. We're talking your daily intake of sodium is in a salt coffee, 100%. Yes, and a salt coffee is maybe a better way to think of it. But it's also so delicious. Like it also, because you make it with what, like cafe sua. In Vietnam is like the brown coffee, which is the mix of condensed milk and coffee. So you have this very strong coffee cut with condensed milk, and then a layer of like cream, like whipping cream with salt all through it. And sometimes you get like cocoa sprinkled on top. And just Vincenzo, welcome to the donut membership level. Enjoy the videos. Yeah, if you have any questions there, feel free to ask. Okay, Mr. Mitchell 100, you said, I'm very capable of doing stuff despite feeling intense panic and disassociation, but I can't help but wish I could do these things without these feelings. It makes me sad, distressed. Do you have any suggestions as how to approach the desire to feel good while doing the things I value? Like I said, I can do them. I'm just suffering greatly while doing them. And it would be nice if I didn't suffer the whole time. So yeah, so part of it, there's always two things to look at with this. The example I'll often use, and I'm making the motion of hitting myself in the face with a frying pan, is if we hit ourselves in the face with a frying pan, sure, we can accept the pain. And maybe we didn't hit ourselves in the face with a frying pan. Maybe somebody threw the frying pan at us, or a pile of bricks fell on us. Absolutely. So we do want to learn how to have these feelings and do things we value. But yeah, what you're describing there immediately, like if a client brought that up, I would have a lot of questions. So I'm not going to be able to get into all the questions now. I would just say that, yeah, there's a stuff going on before those feelings are coming up. Whether you're the one swinging the frying pan or somebody's swinging the frying pan at you, there's things to dig into there. But yeah, it is very possible to do things without those feelings. However, if you're just approaching that while still continuing to hate on the feelings, that'll keep it going too. So it is always both. We are learning how to practice acceptance with uncomfortable feelings. Also, we're going to cut out the stuff that's fueling the uncomfortable feelings, but it's going to be both. So we're accepting this bad thing. We're like, fine, this thing can be here. Also, I'm going to change this other stuff that's fueling it. And that's even on a systems level. We're both going to accept when things are really terrible in the world. We're not going to spend our time just like doom scrolling and hating on it. Also, we are going to change those systems so these bad things are not happening anymore. It's always got to be both. Because if we just go after hating on the feeling and wanting to get rid of it, then we fuel that compulsion cycle. And I just see just Vincenzo, after joining the membership channel, then or joining the donut level, then sharing, yay, I'm a donut. Thank you for being a donut as well. But congratulations also on becoming a donut. It's a wonderful thing. Young Jedi, he said, I would like to share that I'm currently drawing without expectations, and I love it. Sorry about all the reassurance seeking. I'm just very scared. Yeah, it's okay. Drawing sounds wonderful. Drawing is an amazing practice that we can just enjoy creating something. And yet we can have a lot of compassion for why we notice the brain wanting to, like, throwing up in uncertainty. We can have a lot of compassion for why we then try to check for reassurance. Yeah, but we can give it a hug and then do some things we'll enjoy more. Pom Pom Kitty, I'm doing great. I hope you're doing great as well. Oh, and Mr. Joe, you shared a donation so I can get Hui salt coffee. I appreciate it. I will go and use that on salt coffee and then I'll share on Instagram and in the YouTube posts. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for the support. And thank you. I extend thanks from the cafe that will serve the salt coffee. George, yes, so mental health struggles start with how we handle everyday compulsion. I think that's way too simplistic. And also, the focus of what we're doing is not on mental health struggles. The focus of what we're doing is on growing the things we care about. And so from that perspective of we want to give time and energy to things we want to grow in life, I would say that starts with our everyday activities. Sometimes we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to, like, make some big special change. And that also then leads to us procrastinating because we're like, oh, today I can't make the big special change, so I'm just going to do a bunch of compulsions, or I'm just going to do the stuff I've done in the past. Because we're waiting for this moment when we can make the big special change. But actually, it's in our everyday actions. It's in our interactions with everybody else. It's in how we do what we do. It's in how we talk to ourselves about ourselves. It's in the stories we believe in ourselves. It's how we spend our time and energy each day. It's about how we give in any moment. That is the foundation of doing great, amazing things. That is the foundation of just enjoying whatever we're doing. And so that begins with our everyday activities for sure. Mr. Mitchell, I don't know if I'd like salt and pepper candles. Connor said, I have a lot of health anxiety and I'm experiencing skin rashes, acid reflux, and muscle spasms after months of ERP and ACT. Unsure at what point to speak to a doctor. What are your thoughts? Yeah, so Connor, thanks for being part of the members channel. What I find really helpful with health anxiety, I did this too, I recommend this to people a lot, is to actually set like a framework for how you'll interact with doctors. So you just, there's no way to know. You just decide whether it's going to be, because if there are particular types of health issues that you have, that you already knew you had, then you might say, okay, here's when I'm going to go to the doctor, here's when I get tested, and so on. And so just planning that in. For other things, you might set criteria. So what I found useful is just setting some criteria around, when this happens, I'm not going to Google it, I'm not going to look it up, I'm actually going to go straight to a doctor and ask them. So also, you can use this to cut out a bunch of compulsions. As well, when we're cutting out compulsions, this is something longtime attendees will probably heard me talk about this before. Something weird happens with the stuff going into our bodies. And so there's all sorts of physical compulsions. I think it was even last time or the time before, I mentioned I wasn't going to explain some of the physical things that happen just because then people start checking. And so by last time, I mean on the previous live stream. So there's a bunch of physical things that do seem to happen when people cut out compulsions. There's not a lot of research on this stuff. You do see some research on it because people will share about it enough in communities, but it seems to vary. I think what I've shared before on live streams, that the reason the research always ends up inconclusive is because different people will have different physical reactions. What is common is that a lot of people, when they cut out compulsions, have weird physical things happen. But it varies from person to person. Just the consistent thing is, yeah, it's like the body really goes, what? You've got to do compulsions around something. I'm going to give you a real physical issue. So that's the other thing. Quite often, they are real physical issues. And so if you're going to go to the doctor, for instance, just having a lot of compassion with that, a lot of understanding. There was a time when I ran into some physical stuff. And so, yeah, I ended up in the, like, going to the doctor, and they were like, or it was a hospital, like, because it was just going to like the whatever urgent care or whatever. But then they were like, yeah, we can't find anything. And then there are other times where there were very real physical things happen. And I didn't need to go to a doctor, but there was no denying, like, I think even, did you mention skin rashes? Yeah. So yeah, there were a bunch of skin things that would happen. And so I'd be like, I can clearly see it is here, it is real, but there was nothing else to do about it. So yeah, so you may go to the doctor, they may find something, they may find nothing. When we're going through this phase, what I emphasize is just not doing the extra compulsions. Being open to learning. You may learn about some things your body does when you cut out compulsions. And you may just say, okay, that's a thing that happens. Now I know for the future. At the same time, yeah, there might be something else that comes up. You go to the doctor. And then it's just about setting the structure for how you'll take care of that issue so you're not doing the extra compulsions. So yeah, a lot of compassion and kindness as you're navigating that and figuring out what's going to be useful to you. Mr. Mastodon Farm said, I've been doing so many valued actions lately, more than ever, I think. I've built up to a great schedule routine, but I'm also still exploring and trying to add in new activities. It's been so enjoyable and fulfilling. That's fantastic. Enjoy it. I think one of the things that's so useful when we see, right, we can just start to do these valued actions is what would be a good name for it? The sustaining of it, or the cultivating and care for it. Yeah, seeing like we can just do a bunch of things that we really like care about and just do them. And that's enough. So yeah, Mr. Mastodon Farm, enjoy that. Thanks for sharing about that. It is so useful. Yeah, if you're sharing about any of the things you're doing, I've been thinking about this lately in relation to, we've seen members on the Mental Fitness Discord server share about some of the things they do in the world as they're just enjoying. Right, we had, one of our moderators was just sharing about they were leading a meditation retreat. Also, they had created a library recently outside of their home. There's another member who has a plant library they've shared about. I think it's really neat to see these things that people all end up exploring and doing. And I've been thinking about how we can start to capture some of these so that other members, when they're thinking about, because it's so easy to find information on compulsions, even just people sharing about compulsions, whereas it is less common to find information online and just in communities about people saying, well, yeah, like here's how I organized and led a meditation retreat, or here's how I put up a little free library outside of my home. That there's like a barrier to that, in that we just aren't familiar with it. So yeah, if you're exploring anything, Mr. Mastodon Farm, in your adventures with values, please do share, because I'm sure other people would be interested in exploring similar things as well. Chris Slays the Math Dragon, great to see you. Said, I'm a chronic people pleaser and it is exhausting and stressful. What are some exercises I can do to help with this? First of all, there's always the great meme of if you're a people pleaser, produce one person who is pleased with you. and that can help us see that we're maybe we're not maybe we don't need to spend so much time people pleasing. One of the things that would look at there is, in the people pleasing, what are you afraid of losing and what are you trying to get? I'd look at the what are you trying to get, because there might be things there that you're trying to get that are going to be useful to start giving to yourself. If you look at what you're afraid of losing, that can typically point us in the direction of some other areas where we can practice. Because that's where we'll see those normal compulsions we might do quite often that's teaching the brain we have to get people to like us, we have to avoid conflict, and so on. So where is the brain learning that? Those other areas are typically where we can play around with exercises. And so it would be doing things different. Like, for example, if you find you reread messages repeatedly, when you've written a message because you want to make sure you don't say the wrong thing and that people will be upset, a super fun exercise that I did, like I shared about it in my book, is to write the message once and hit send. And you do not reread it, you do not check it again. And so, yeah, be looking at, are there things like that? Where else in life are you kind of practicing the logic of the people pleasing? And that's a fun area to make changes. Oh, Mr. Mitchell, candies, salt and pepper candies? Maybe. Salt and pepper candies could totally work. Yeah, have fun digging into, where those feelings you mentioned begin. Jisho, welcome. Puke Garte said, I've been doing ERP for 2 months now. I keep relapsing and doing the compulsions, and it leaves me very discouraged when it happens. The one, really normal, and there's a couple things. So it's, if you find yourself relapsing, and I don't know if you caught this, we were talking about it earlier, it's really useful to start looking at what happens just before you relapse. Because there's a couple things to look at there. So that is the compulsion. So if we're doing ERP, then that is the thing we're cutting out. If we keep relapsing and we're not cutting out the compulsion, why is that? Is there some other compulsion that actually we didn't notice was the compulsion, but happens earlier? So by the time we get to the compulsion we're trying to cut out, we're actually creating a really difficult challenge for ourselves, because we're fueling the pressure to do the compulsion and then trying to cut it out. So an example of that, if somebody has their social media account, like they started it just to get validation from people, and they post things, they spend a lot of time trying to like get things right, and even they're like trying to, I don't know, like do all of the poses or manipulate posts in a particular way and to give a particular vibe to people. So do you see that that's already a compulsion? So they're already telling the brain the important thing of why we're spending this time and energy is to control what other people think. If they then develop another compulsion to constantly check back to social media every night to make sure they haven't like typed out some terrible phrase or shared something wrong, like shared like a nude photo to their public social media account or something, and they notice that's a compulsion, and they try to cut that out, but then they keep relapsing, going back to check. I would say that makes sense because their whole reason for using social media is a compulsion. So if they keep using social media and fueling this idea of like, I've got to control what other people think about me, then of course they're going to keep relapsing because they're telling the brain, we should control what other people think about us. So then the brain's going, okay, well, what if we did this bad thing? And then what would people think about us then? It's very difficult to cut that out because the brain's argument to do the compulsion sounds valid based on the whole reason we're doing it at all. So we've got to change a whole lot of things there, not just that compulsion kind of at the end of the line. There's a whole lot to happen before it. Oh, and Mr. Mastodon Farm, thank you. Thank you for encouraging everybody to shape things as questions. It is useful. It is also something that it reminds me of chatbots. I've noticed, I think one of the things that chatbots are doing is making people not directly communicate, because the chatbot will do all of the work for us. Right? If you just say something, it'll ask you, hey, well, like if you just type donuts, it'll be like, what would you like to know about donuts? Would you like a recipe? Would you like me to tell you how wonderful donuts are? Like, because it's just going to try to keep you engaged. But I think it's affecting people's communication skills and style. I hope somebody's doing research on it. Everybody, we're coming up to the end, and yeah, we're almost at 2 hours, so we'll wrap up shortly. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We got a couple more questions, but thank you, everybody, for the support. We had a bunch of people join the membership channel, and Mr. Joe, thank you for the donations to the Salt Coffee Fund. I really appreciate the donations that help make the live streams happen. King Khan said, do we need a routine to stay focused on our values? No, I think a benefit of values is that we don't need a routine because we have values. And so I think values are particularly useful. One of the reasons I find them so useful is because so much is changing in my life constantly, right? Because I move around all the time. I'm in different time zones, and also I meet like coaching clients at different hours of the day, and all the time people will ask me, hey, can we meet at this time or something like that. So also my kind of like office hours are changing constantly. So I do not have a routine. Even my meditation times change all the time. I don't meditate, and again, partly moving around, but also then as I move places, other things shift in my schedule. So I find values really helpful, because I'm going to enter into the day having a routine of values, which are just a set of values that I know are important to me and I know I want to explore today. Then I look at the context for the day, and it's really about saying, okay, given this context and where I am in the world and what I have available to me, how can I do these things that are important to me today? And then I'm going to give time and energy to that and those things I want to do. But there's not a specific magic benefit to a routine. If we're getting caught up in that, I think that can make us really vulnerable. Because then if you're saying the routine is what makes sure I don't relapse, well, then anything that disrupts the routine, then like that shouldn't be a reason to relapse. So when we can adapt to any situation and see what's important and give our time and energy to that, that's really useful. And now, sure, making things easy is also, I would say, a really important support. And so if you're in a situation where having a consistent routine is going to make it really easy, and you don't have to spend as much time thinking about stuff, and you get to get out of your head and get into life, yeah, then a routine is phenomenal. But there we're exploring the routine as a support, not as this thing I must have or else I will relapse. The routine might just be a really great thing to have in our lives. But we can also adapt to whatever comes up, because a lot of stuff happens in a very uncertain world. Boasting Gamer, welcome to the donut level. Thank you for being a donut member. Boasting Gamer, he said, I know about recovery since years, but I feel like I've made zero progress and can't start making sustainable mental fitness routines like meditation, etc. Just repeating recovery thoughts in the brain. Recovery is not about knowing stuff. I always find it, and even the most recent video, I don't know if you saw, there's a video, the most recent long video on my YouTube channel is about 3 reasons people often relapse. The third reason in that video is on that. that I'd say a key reason people will often relapse is they approach recovery and mental health as things to know about. They are things we do. And so you see it right there. Yeah. If we're repeating recovery thoughts in our head, we'll often feel like, oh, well, like I know a thing. Like it feels reassuring, but it's irrelevant and a compulsion, right? We're just spending more time and energy in our heads. Now, great mental health is about actions. And so it's about doing stuff. So if you want to incorporate a routine like meditation, like at first, approaching it not as like I've got to have this recovery like routine, but just approaching it as getting good at change. That's a sport. I'd recommend that to everybody, especially anybody's watching this. You're getting started on a recovery, mental health, and fitness journey. A helpful way to approach it is just saying, I want to get good at change, right? I want to make changes while having experiences like thoughts and feelings. And that's what I'm going to explore. So it might be meditation, but it could be anything else. Is there something this coming week you'd find useful to practice in your life? And just being curious about it. So it's not about like, I've got to do this and then I'm recovering, or if I fail at this, I'm a failure and I'm relapsing. None of that. Just, I want to learn how to make this change and sustain this change. And so it could be anything. It could be as simple as doing something different, like going for a walk in the morning instead of what you would typically do. Just saying, I want to learn how to introduce a new thing in my life, like going for a walk every morning, and just stick with it. And I want to learn what makes it difficult, what supports me in doing it. What's it like in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks, if I just sustain a change? All of this stuff we explore around mental health is just about doing things differently and sustaining it. So any place we can learn and practice that skill is then really useful. And then we just build up the types of things we make changes around. Chris Slays the Math Dragon said, how can I tell if an action is actually a valued action or something that I'm doing as a compulsion or to get a feeling? The line can be very blurry. So I don't know if you caught it earlier, we were talking about cookies. Rather than trying to figure out, like, how do I know if this is a bad thing or not? Identify the thing you want to do. So I want to make chocolate chip cookies. And then what are the ways to make delicious chocolate chip cookies? And then not worrying about, oh no, am I only making chocolate chip cookies because it's a compulsion? It's seeing in the long term, does that take you somewhere that you wanted to go? And if it doesn't, then you'll see, okay, and again, I don't have to get caught up in like, that's a compulsion or not. I just see, making chocolate chip cookies every day did not help me open a donut shop. I've always wanted to open a donut shop, so why am I making chocolate chip cookies every day? Okay, I'm going to do something different then. Such as making donuts every day. Young Jedi, thank you for stopping by. I will see you at the meetup in the Netherlands. Thank you for joining us today and sharing. Oh yeah, Mr. Mastodon Farm showed a really good point on meditation too. The group meditation on the Mental Fitness Discord server has helped me with meditating regularly, and here's the link if you're not a member. So yeah, everybody, Mr. Mastodon Farm just shared the link to the Discord server right there. Yeah, Pukigarte. You said, one of my problems is trying to make the routine or actions in ACT ERP perfect. Yeah, it's important to remember some days you'll be bored and out of ideas and not have much going on. And that's okay too. As Mr. Mastodon Farm said in response to that, yes, just being ourselves and taking care of ourselves can be very enjoyable. Yep, the simple actions are the way to go. It doesn't have to be big, special stuff. Just being, right? My mental health practice is making breakfast. There is not some big complicated thing we need to be doing. Yeah, Chris Slays the Math Dragon said, I found that most of the things I value, in quotation marks, or just more things I'm doing just to get people to like me? How can I learn to do things just for myself? Yeah, but that's a great question, actually, to ask yourself. So if you look at the week ahead, what are some things you're going to practice doing just to you, for you, to support you, that are expressions of things you care about? All right, everybody. That brings us right to the end, and we're right at 2 hours. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here and sharing. Thank you, everybody, for the donations, joining the members channel. Mr. Mastodon Farm, thank you so much for taking care of the chat and helping get things set up today. Everybody, we'll see you on the Mental Fitness Discord server. Also, we're looking for an image right now, an avatar image for the Bell bot and the Gratitude bot. They're the same, the Bell Gratitude bot that we're reviving right now. So we're blending the what used to be multiple bots. We're turning them into a single bot, and we need a new image, a human created image. So there's a thread in general. If you have, actually, I'm not going to say if. Everybody, you have drawing skills, especially for an avatar. So please share your drawings, and then we're just going to pick randomly to get the new avatar for the Bell Gratitude bot. So please take part in that. And oh, Crystal is the Math Dragon. I appreciate it. Oh, thank you for stopping by on a Sunday morning. Everybody, it's great to see you all. Remember what I mentioned at the start, we're exploring mental health and fitness skills, not for irrational, weird stuff in our heads. These are skills for the real uncertainties in life and in the world. We're learning how to experience uncertainty, fear, craving, urges, whatever, wherever, whether it's inside our heads or it's coming at us from a politician, something on the news, something somebody's trying to sell to us, the social media algorithm. We are going to notice that, catch it, and we're going to give our time and energy to creating and building things proactively that we want to see in the world. Stay smart out there. Thank you, everybody.